What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that seemed to be highly anticipated. We've definitely gone over this band in the past, brought up some collection updates, so we are going to go over the latest offering from Soen Memorial. This also comes out on the 1st of September on Silver Lining Music. This band formed in 2010 in Sweden. This is their 6th album overall. As I said, we went over their last one, Imperial, and we definitely noticed a stylistic shift in terms of their overall sound. Their earlier works I would definitely describe as like flat out progressive metal with like a little bit of like alt metal mixed in there. Very comparable to Tool, but also comparable to Opeth. And that is partially due to the fact that Martin Lopez is their drummer and still an absolutely fucking fantastic drummer. You know, Deliverance still up there with like one of my favorite fucking
100%
progressive metal albums ever. But as the band kept going on with albums like Tellurian, Lakeia, and Lotus, I think they were really hitting like a cool zenith of like just really good prog metal. I was a huge fan. And then again, Imperial kind of let us down. It kind of got really formulaic, kind of sticking mostly to like 4/4 time, sort of big rock hooks. And well, we thought that was just kind of tamed down too much, and we did not give that album a very favorable review. And we even probably called it like a bit of a cash grab in terms of like more accessibility. Well, they kind of took that and said, hold my beer if you want to hear some accessibility. And believe me, that beer was definitely Bud Light.
Yeah, whomever was drinking IPAs when they may have started out listening to this band have definitely traded in those IPAs for a much lighter domestic party beer like Bud Light. We may have said cash grab before, and I think we were kind of spot on there. This is definitely a cash grab.
I will say that pretty much everything that I really liked about this band as a whole has pretty much been stripped clear in favor of formulaic, I'll just say it, butt rock. You know, I know this band still has like some progressive elements, but they are dialed down for the sake of just writing anthemic hooks and very basic song structure to the point where I can't really even call it prog metal at all, and there's a lot of fans there that still do.
There is one single solitary moment on this record that you might be able to consider prog rock, and it's at the very beginning of the first track, Sincere. Danny Carey called, he wants his tribal drum opening back.
Yep.
That's it.
And
that's literally it.
Yeah, it just kind of goes into 4/4 time, kind of new metal-y bounce, which believe me, that's on here. Fortress and Incendiary, they kind of follow that almost kind of like Seven Dust sort of formula. And that is not to dog on Seven Dust. I still really like that band, but
I do too.
I expect that sort of thing from Seven Dust because they've been doing it well for fucking forever now. This band started off as, you know, a really cool prog band that was, you know, maybe not necessarily pushing all the boundaries and all that in terms of like rewriting prog, but they were doing it really well. The songs were rich with dynamics, cool shifts, great vocals, great drum work.
Atmosphere.
Loads of atmosphere, both loaded with like really good heavy sections with, you know, intricate playing and really cool melodies, and even like softer, more introspective moments with thought-provoking, you know, lyrics, which the thought-provoking lyrics really haven't changed much. I will give them that.
They're still here. That, you know, it's human rights. A lot of it's inspirational and like definitely things that we support.
Yeah.
Coming out of especially music like this.
I don't support butt rock though.
But I don't either. Like, and oh man, the second song, Unbreakable. While it started with a cool riff, and there are cool riffs here and there throughout this album. I won't strip it completely of someone being able to play a guitar. However, a lot of it sounds like backing tracks, like stock riffs for backing tracks that you would find on YouTube. Like you want to throw a lead over something, but first you got to teach yourself how to play like rhythm guitar. And this would be that. Unbreakable, aside from that cool riff in the beginning, it just sounded like Disturbed.
And this coming from a band that was very comparable to like Tool and Catatonia, and both bands that I still like. Granted, the last Tool album was a bit of a snooze fest, but it was better than this. A lot of these songs just follow a format, and they repeat a lot of the same dynamics. And for something labeled as progressive metal, that is something that really kind of weared on me a lot. You have a lot of the same rhythms. In fact, like the drum work is very straightforward, and I mean, it is Martin Lopez on drums, and I do expect, I don't know, a little bit more. Like, this isn't Deliverance, this isn't, Blackwater Park.
This sounds like he was playing one-handed, just like having some fun. In fact, there are not one song, not two songs, but 3 songs with cowbell.
Yeah, and it's weird. They kind of just pop up out of nowhere. Like, did you hear that? And it's like, yeah, is that a cowbell? Yeah. That's on his kit. And he does have like his heavier moments where he shows off a little bit of the extra footwork, like namely Memorial. There's some really heavy, metallic, syncopated chugs on there. Like, it's probably the most metal sounding song on the album.
An Icon, where I kind of got reminded a little bit of like Lamb of God, but like newer Lamb of God, where it's stripped of the things that originally made Lamb of God cool in the beginning, which was, fast, heavy, drumming, riffing, heavy. But, like, that's about it.
I feel like every song on here was just kind of going for that brass ring in terms of, like, hey, get on the radio is kind of a dated term, but chase the algorithm.
Yep.
Like,
yep.
Get in that same sort of stream or flow as bands like, I don't know, like Breaking Benjamin, or kind of the, Red State Rock festivals like Rocklahoma, like, one of those bands that would be higher up.
Rock on the Range, this, unfortunately, I think is going to appear more so in the Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed, Staind, and Creed realm.
Yeah, and that's sad because I don't like comparing this band to any of those bands, especially Five Finger Death Punch, but there's some stuff that is very comparable in terms of the format and the formula. Like, granted, I think, the vocals are much better, the lyrics are much more thoughtful.
They are. The vocals are much better. In fact, the vocals are much better than 90% of butt rock out there.
Yeah, and there are some cool, like, heavy metal guitar harmonies that pop up that are, kind of nice, and Unbreakable, Fortress, Tragedian. But, again, the songwriting style, it is very samey. From track to track. There are some standout tracks, but unfortunately they don't stand out for good reasons, and we'll get to those. But, it is kind of comparable to Five Finger Death Punch in the sense that the songs are very formulaic. They follow the tried and true tropes that work, except, in this case, this is like Five Finger Death Punch if they knew how to read or graduated from high school or college or, any of that shit that they clearly haven't done. There was a point in this, I was listening, and honestly, it kind of reminded me of when Queensryche made their shift to more commercial rock, and I think I kind of sympathized with those fans back then when, I'd say like Empire was kind of the turning point, but kind of everything after Empire really started to irk Queensryche fans. And I get it, because they started off really, really fucking good, and then kind of slowly morphed into something that was decidedly more commercial. You
can kind of make that same argument with Metallica, who started off in a great vein of really heavy, entertaining thrash, and just kind of...
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird because, Imperial had a fucking black cover, too.
Huh.
Yeah.
But then there's another thing about this album, and I understand doing it once, especially if you're making an album such as this that we have compared to a lot of just straight, like, rock bands or cock rock bands or butt rock, as we've called them, the ballads. The problem with ballads in this case is there's not one of them, but 3 of them. Hollowed, Tragedian, and Vitals. The first one, Hollowed, sounds a lot like Seether's song Broken with Amy Lee.
It does.
Tragedian, while it gets a little bluesy, it starts to have, I hate to say it, a little bit of a country pop feel to it.
Tear in my beer.
And then Vitals is a very quiet, country-ish piano ballad that could be a gospel song. I was raised in a church home. I was raised going to church all the time, and a lot of these ballads sound more like Christian rock songs without the religious lyrical theme. And I hate to fucking say that, but it's true.
It does, especially Vitals. Like, Vitals has that big kind of butt rock crescendo at the end, and I mean, you could almost see like the Christian rock crowd, and let's get hands up there. We don't throw devil horns. Jesus. We want to get up there and touch the undercarriage of Jesus. Get up underneath that robe.
Oh my Lord. Throw some money in the collection plate.
Make it a 20 or a 50.
Oh, and the car I drive, I know it looks new, but my Pinto's in the shop.
No, but seriously, that car's new, and I need to make car payments.
Yes. Yeah.
For the Lord.
For the Lord, indeed. Hallelujah. Ah.
And, all right, I suppose you can make an argument, like, all right, including country and blues and, like, this sound, you can make an argument. It's like, well, that's kind of progressive because they're including different genres of music and mixing up. But it's the delivery. The delivery just sounds like a bland single from kind of either camp. Like, it could be just like, well, this is the more rockin' country. Like, you know, they don't drink Bud Light, they drink Coors, like real men or some shit. But, you know, it's just the sort of vibe. And if it's a rocker, it's like, yeah, it just sounds like any, like, big anthemic, catchy sing-along song. Like, a lot of these songs just feel like they were, you know, just made to get people singing along. And while I think the lyrics are passionate about their subject matter, the music just sounds rote, stock. Like, honestly, if someone switched this up and peppered in like a fucking Breaking Benjamin track in the middle of this, I don't know if I'd be able to tell the difference outside of the singer. And again, I don't mind like just straight up rock and stuff like that. Like, you know, I don't flat out hate it, but this is, again, bland. It kind of lacks a sense of urgency or dynamic or anything like that. And this is more of an observation and just something that was kind of rattling around my head while I was listening to this and trying to ignore all the things that I didn't like, which were a lot. But this band sounds like a U.S. band now. Like, it doesn't sound like a European band at all. Like, the sort of character of like more European bands is sort of stripped away. Like, you get occasional fluttering synths in there, but a lot of this feels more tailor-made for American audiences. Just the way the songs are constructed. Big anthemic chorus, big rockin', you know, main riff, and a vocal line that you can follow, and vocals that aren't too harsh for, you know, people like, whoa, hold on, I can't have them screaming or anything.
Right.
And almost the same sort of dropout thing around the bridge. Like, where everything drops out except for a piano and the vocals, or it's a really soft guitar line. Like, you know, the drums almost completely drop out often. That happens on almost every track on here.
There are more dropouts in this album than Ivan Moody's schooling attempts.
Assuming he showed up, like he knew what the building looked like. Now, from a financial standpoint, I can't blame them for the shift. Like, I believe the last album moved a lot of units, and yeah, this is definitely their most accessible album to date. And honestly, I wish them success, because I mean, I do still like this band's past works, just not their recent ones. That being said, their more recent stuff, like, there's only so many soaring choruses that I can hear, especially when all the choruses seem to soar at about the same altitude. This was a real chore to get through, and, you know, even the more metallic moments, I mean, maybe it just sounded a bit like fan service to a degree, like for the fans of the heavier stuff, but even that doesn't feel necessarily right, because it just sounds like stock heavy moments.
Yep. You could have copy and pasted most of this record just by using samples on the internet, to be honest. You could have cut and copied and pasted different random riffs from around the internet and a simple drum beat, and you could have put this together just to sound generic. Like, okay, I just made a song. It's generic as fuck, but I made a song. Here's some really good vocals on top of it. And that's a lot of what it was. And
that's kind of a huge problem, especially considering like how many bands there are out there like this. Like, this feels like it's diluted and, you know, kind of just being added to this homogenized pool of kind of bland, faceless, you know, alt metal, hard rock. I mean, calling this a metal album, I suppose it's still justified on some tracks, but for the most part, this is more of like a hard rock album. And yeah, this is just kind of continuing a commercial shift that apparently a lot of review sites don't seem to see, because we were going over some reviews for this out there just to see if anyone heard what we heard, and a lot of them didn't. There's a lot of like weird reviews that are just calling like this the prog album of the decade. Like, fuck anything else that came out this decade, I guess.
Somebody called it the best and most accessible album of the year.
You got it half right.
From this career. Yeah, from this band's career. You got it half right. It is the most accessible. As far as the best, I cannot side with that.
No.
At all.
So yeah, I didn't have a lot of nice things to say about this, so here comes probably a kind of mean review. I'm going to give this, God, 1.5 stars. Like, legit, it's boring, it's dull, it's rote. None of the character that I initially really liked about this band is there. Maybe minus, some really good vocal delivery, and, all the songs are catchy, but they're also very stock. There's very little about this that I would call progressive. I mean, it's executed well for what it is, but there are tons of bands already executing this sound almost exactly, and I don't think we needed one more, especially when this band started off with some really solid work. Steve DiGiorgio was on the fucking first album. That's already some really awesome street cred. He wouldn't be caught dead on this one. Like, this is, again, just sort of bland, lifeless rock. Like, we went over the most recent Seven Dust, and Seven Dust does Seven Dust well. That's what I expect from them. They kind of have a gear that they stay in, but this band started off with a really solid gear and kind of just moved into a bland gear. I really wish I had nicer things to say about this album, because I do have a lot of respect for their earlier work, but this is just dull. Like, this is the most plain fucking shit I think I've listened to from this band yet, and I'm dreading them putting out another album like this. I'm really hoping that they kind of switch gears, but again, I imagine it will probably be successful, because this is definitely their most accessible album. So yeah, if you like Breaking Benjamin and stuff of that ilk, like, I really can't even compare them to like Catatonia anymore. It's not the same vibe anymore. But yeah, if you just like anthemic rock with, again, some poignant lyrics, check it out. I'm probably never going to listen to this again.
I can't even give it 1.5. I'm going to give it 1 star. When this band started out, they were like one of those everything pita chips. You ever had those? Yeah. Where it was spicy and salty and tasty and had a lot of flavors to it and a lot of promise. And this record is more comparable to a dry saltine cracker. There's not a lot going on. I found myself to be very bored very early on. By the time we got to the third song, which sounded much like the first and second song, I thought, holy shit, is this album going to do the same thing that the dud that Imperial was? Except in this case, I believe, if you want to call these guys progressive, I would state that at this point in the game, it's got progressively worse. It sounds generic, and it sounds so generic to the point where this reminds me of people that say music like this is heavy. People that don't like metal, but they're like, I listen to some heavy rock bands, and you're like, oh yeah, who do you listen to? And they're like, I really like Disturbed and Five Finger Death Punch, and you're like, all right, cool. All these songs sound the same, and the ones that don't sound the same, unfortunately, sound even more like things I wouldn't listen to, i.e. country, i.e. gospel music. I, much like Nick, when this band started out, I thought they were really good. I thought that they had a lot to offer, and I thought that even though it sounded like kind of a more like accessible, maybe rocky version of progressive music, it still had progressive elements to it. In their earlier career, they had character. They had character development. This had, unfortunately, the character development in a Michael Bay movie. I was really let down, and it's a shame because I did like this band and still like this band in their earlier years. This would just not be a record I ever go back to. I'm excited that I never have to listen to this again. There are some redeemable moments on this record, but they're in the vocals. Yeah. The rest of it is just there.
Yeah. And honestly, I urge you guys to check out their earlier material. Like, check out their first 4 albums.
Yeah, dude, for real.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Granted, our link is also on our channel, and the site is still under construction, but that will be showing up soon, because we're going to have some shirts to show you and a video and do a little giveaway, and the store will be open.
Yep, and once again, because I've said it in every video, so why not say it in this one, we are promoting local music here once again, or rather, a local show. Our CBGB's has come back, and it's not CBGB's, it's Frankie's here in Toledo. But it's a venue we all grew up in. We've been there hundreds of times for shows. They're bringing back now the existence of that venue and bringing back metal. Revocation, Unearth, High Command, and Entheos are on the bill. $25, October 1st. Come on out, dude. It's metal. It's Frankie's. And if you've never been there, you'll understand.
And of course, thank you guys so much for all the likes, the subscriptions, all that shit. It means the world to us. I know we do the same thank you bit at the end, but I always mean it. I am always appreciative. Yep. It's amazing doing this, and you guys are an awesome fucking, community. It's just fucking great, and we're looking forward to pumping out more content and, jamming a lot of Judas Priest, getting ready for that ranking. It's going to be ridiculously long, but probably ridiculously fun. Mm-hmm. But either way, thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.